Welcome to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society, whose mission is making connections through music with the intention of bringing peace. And today, here in Studio One and the worldwide headquarters of the Planetary Gig Society, you are in for a very, very special treat because we're going to be talking about music in a way that I'm not sure you've ever thought about. We're going to be talking about synesthesia. And here in the worldwide headquarters studio is Patty Raine, who is a artist, illustrator, writer, musician, and a synesthete. Hi, Patty.
Hi, Jeff.
Thanks so much for being here. I met you when I turned 60, and we had a big party and a band, the Transposable Souls Band, and Tara helped pull it together. Tara Gorman, Goddess of Awesomeness, helped pull it together, and we ended up having a fabulous time. But you were in the band and sang, and since then I've seen you many times playing music, different things, and you even drew a picture one time of me and my tonal qualities, I might say. But welcome, and tell us a little bit about what you do and sort of how music and your perceptions of music kind of started off.
Well, let's see. I've been in the D.C. area since 1975, and during that time I was a graphic designer and did some music on the side. I didn't start doing full-time illustration, that is freelance, until 1986. And during the illustration those early days, I did a lot of political caricature. I did and literary caricature for the Washington Post and U.S. News and World Report, and it was great. And my website has all of those older illustrations on it. Now I'm transitioning, putting a lot of new things up there. The atmosphere is ripe for new commentary.
Yeah, that's for sure. So, we've talked about your perceptions of music and really the world and the things that you see. So when do you first start, or when do you remember first noticing music, or what you perceived about music when you were little? Did you take lessons? Did you just hear music? Did you start seeing stuff?
When I was a very small child, I saw things in color. I mean, I had color impressions of everyone. I had green friends, blue friends, yellow friends. It was a normal thing. I didn't isolate it as its thingness. I didn't really investigate ever since I was a little kid. And I grew up in a family. There was lots of music, lots of reading Rimsky-Korsakov and Dave Brubeck and Ahmad Jamal and Bach and Beethoven, and it was always there, always available.
You used to see your friends, you'd sort of see colors.
Yes.
And so what are those colors, and how do the colors relate to music, or what did you think at the time, and what have you come to learn about that? Yeah,
I didn't think anything of it. I didn't associate the colors with music I didn't associate that with any kind of language, but it was informing me, and I learned later that it's kind of a navigational tool. So I finally started investigating this around 1998. I had moved to Boulder, Colorado to take a break from the East Coast. Mm-hmm. I'd been in D.C. 75 to about 95, and then took a big break of about 10 years. And while in Boulder, I say this in my presentations, in the land of woo-woo, mm-hmm. I really investigated what it was that I saw. I sat down and I did what I just called them case studies. I had booklets and booklets of portraits that I would have people sit down, and I would tell them what I would see. And it was just tone of their voice and the shape of their face. And that would elicit all these colors, shapes, forms. And I think I mentioned to you, I looked at everything I could, everything I glossed over in college. I had studied physiology, but I looked at quantum physics. I looked at Chinese five-element theory. I looked back on, this is before the advent of YouTube. So it was difficult because I had to go to the libraries to get access to Hans Jenny's work, which was in cymatics, where he would put sand on a metal plate and then infuse the metal plate with an oscillator, and the oscillator would deliver a frequency, and that sand would form itself according to that frequency. And the higher the frequency got, the more articulated the sand would get. So basically, what he was infusing that plane with, and what basically I was seeing in people's energetic fields, was music, was tonal values. And for example, red is 440 megahertz. It relates to the key of A.
Right.
The sacral chakra orange relates to the key of B. Middle C is the solar plexus chakra. The heart chakra is D, which is ironically is the brightest chord. It's the most beautiful chord, D, and it's one that D major. It's one that Mozart would use often as a basis for his composition. And it goes upward there. It goes up all up the chakras. So I use that as a template to understand what I was seeing with people. And I think I mentioned to you, I was seeing their tonal value, their integrity, their chord, as it were.
So just to sort of summarize what I think that you're saying, when you see people and things and animals and whatever, I may just see a horse or a person, and you sort of see the vibrations that they are in or emanating, and they have color and sound.
Yes. Well, color, I'm seeing sound, basically. I'm not necessarily hearing, I'm seeing, and sound is part of the light spectrum,
Right.
There's the whole spectrum, in the light spectrum, in the visible light spectrum. I'm seeing a kind of visible light spectrum that relates to sound, and it's measurable.
So you can, it's seeing vibrations that have a color, but that is really sound.
Yes, it really is sound. Because, at least that's the way I translated it, because invariably I would see an initial, with someone when they would speak, I'd see an initial impression, and it just comes right at me, an impression of color. And then that color would start to differentiate into shapes and forms, and some of the forms would be very mundane, daily forms, but it did, and I asked a multitude of questions to understand what it was I was seeing. That's why I call these case studies.
Right.
But I did indeed relate it to music, because music, it's mathematics, it's the language of the spheres, it's the language of the cosmos. It's the language we're communicating with every day.
Yeah.
At all times. So, but basically, essentially, is what I was saying is how people really felt about themselves in relation to their environment.
So, could you give an example of, say, you're somewhere, you look at somebody, and maybe they're happy or they're angry, or so that people can sort of understand what you're perceiving?
So, for example, I would sit with someone, and often I would initially see 2 or 3 colors related to them. Sometimes it related to their name, sometimes it did not. More often it related to the tone of the voice and the shape of the face. And so they would tell me about an ongoing issue, let's say. And depending on, as they told me about this issue, I would see certain constructs would build around the energetic field around a person. Imagine the classic aura egg But these constructs would build these shapes and forms. And I finally learned what those shapes and forms meant only by asking the person, what's that? What's that? Sometimes they were very mundane shapes and certain specific things like a watch or a car, and it did indeed relate to what the person was talking about. But again, I knew that was just a mundane level. I wanted to get with them, I wanted to get to a higher, a more universal level. That is, what they were emitting was sometimes incongruent. It lacked coherence with their own natural way of being. That was in direct odds to...
They're a little out of sync.
A little out of sync. And so imagine a dissonant chord. You're playing a chord, it's very nice, it's the fifths, fourths, thirds. It's a beautifully constructed chord. And then all of a sudden, you are influenced by image, you're influenced by society, you're influenced by dictates and, ideas, ideologies, and it distorts your initial vibration, your chord. And basically that's what I was seeing. I was seeing things that both were beneficial to the person and things that were not beneficial.
So you could essentially perceive or see someone who is really greedy or really angry or something, and it kind of, it makes them out of sync.
Yes.
And you can tell a little bit about that just in looking at them.
Yes. For example, say a person with who was heart chakra centered, which was green. It always had a green quality that also related to the liver. This is Chinese 5-element medicine. I mean, I just used everything, every template I possibly could. But it related to the key of D. And if someone was, and often people who led with this frequency, with this tonal value, often suffered from the malaise of jealousy. And so jealousy would look like something. For me, it looked like leaves, like kudzu, covering the body. And it was literally choking off the person and it literally squeezed capillaries on a very literal level and was squeezing off the heart. So by their own, how they were thinking, that's what it looked like, and that's what it was doing to their bodies. And that's music. That's interesting. I mean, music can be harmonious, and tonal values can be very harmonious,
right,
and they can be very distorting.
Yeah.
If you like with a lot of heavy metal rock or acid rock, if that's delivered relentlessly, if that's the steady dose, it does affect the cells. I mean, Emoto did all this work, the Japanese guy that did all this work on how water was affected. Well, we are mostly water, and it's going to distort us. You want to get back to a certain kind of harmonious quality, something that's easier on the body.
Right. So you said that this is synesthesia, and you've been describing it basically, but what else would you say to somebody who wants to understand what synesthesia is?
Well, synesthesia as opposed to anesthesia. Anesthesia is no feeling. Synesthesia is a marriage of feelings or sensation. Is no sensation, I should say. And anesthesia, no sensation. Synesthesia is a marriage of sensations. That is, and it's an odd, marriage. You're seeing sound. You're hearing color. It's a very different. Some people have temperature sensations or sensations in their bodies when certain music is played, that kind of thing. So it's sort of a cross wiring, and it occurs in a multitude of people, from childhood on.
So you said when you were trying to research what it is that this was, you looked into quantum physics, and I find the study fascinating. I talk with people about it, and the different waves and particles can be waves or particles at the same time or different times and show up at different places in the universe. And and the object is sort of created by the observer. And in discussing this with you, you said that is sort of what you're seeing or you're perceiving through
Yes.
this.
For example, if you're observing like this or having these kinds of observations, you have to be careful in your observation, because the thing that is being observed can be altered if, for example, it's just a very minor example of this. If I'm overly analyzing what I see, if I'm not letting it be and just simply observing, which is a classic yogi, it's Ramana Maharshi,
Right.
was a classic observer. He was bright yellow, by the way. He was middle C. But you have to be careful that you're not going beyond, or as the I Ching says, to going more than halfway in your observation, so that the thing that you are observing can fulfill itself. That is, show you the fulfillment of what it is in that moment in time. And then it always changes. That's evolution, that's transformation. The more you see it and allow it to transform, the more you stay out of it, and then things transform in yourself as well. So it's quite a study. But as it relates to music, music, for me, it's implicitly transformative. When people hear it, something happens. It always happens. It's
Right,
something,
right.
It stops you. It stops you in your tracks. You want to hear more. Some of the best music that's done is you are both the observed and the observer. You're both and. It's like the particle and the wave. You're right there in it. You're experiencing it. You're participating, and it's fulfilling something in you at the same time.
Wow. So if you're with a group of people and some people are playing and some are singing and some are listening, that's sort of all being shared, I guess.
It's all participation.
It's all participation. Even if you're listening, it's participation.
Even if you're listening, it's nice if you can play. But there's so many people who are appreciators. Just the appreciation, because you're receiving something. You're receiving vibration is going right through your body, and you're also seeing the joie de vivre. All the joy that people have playing and interacting, and it's the kind of conversation that is, sort of classically non-linear. It's not call and response. There's a different kind of call and response. It's like classic improv. You show up on the stage, you jam. It's improv. Whatever's happening there, that's what I think life is. Whatever is happening there, you respond to, either in kind, and if you cannot respond, if you start reacting to it, you need to get off the stage.
You were also talking a little bit earlier about music being the word.
Yeah.
And I guess that's sort of in the creative sense at the core. How would you describe that?
Well, in my presentations, I have this little film that I'm redoing now, but I begin it with. I just talk about in the beginning there was the word. What is this word? Is it a sound? And I thought it was a sound. That is a vibration. It's a sound. It's a bang, the bang, the sound. It's a vibrational quality that creates form. So it's creating form, and that's basically what I'm seeing in people. I'm seeing the sound they emanate and the forms they're creating, and some of those forms are deleterious, and some of those forms are beneficial. And that's what music does with people all the time.
And why are people creating some sounds that are beneficial and others that are not? They're creating that
because, as I mentioned, you get distorted. We all get distorted. Our original, our original, I would say, template, or the original tonal values, frequencies we came in on. I look at things this way. You come in on certain frequencies, and you're subject to whatever is on that bandwidth of frequency. Imagine it's like a radio station, and whatever has happened, it's what the would be called the Akashic record. Whatever's happened in history is on that frequency. And so the degree to which you are have caused yourself to be out of balance, whether by bad habits or habits of mind or habits of thinking or whatever, it will make you more susceptible to the more negative aspects on those frequencies. And that's sort of in a nutshell. And the degree to which you can keep yourself in balance, calm yourself, and step back is the degree to which you will be immune from receiving that.
So in a way, I mean, sometimes they talk about in situations that may be upsetting and whatever, if you can sort of witness, step back and sort of witness, even though you're part of it, not let it overcome you in a sense.
And that's where observation comes in. You're when you're in a discordant situation, you're observing yourself. You've got to start observing yourself immediately. When you're in discord, say, okay, what does this feel no, or does this feel yes? If it feels no, that requires a step back, a real step back, and a self-assessment. Can I continue? What are my natural limits? Can I go more than I can't go more than halfway with this. I have to step back because the integrity of my body, mind, my bodily cells demands that I step back, and the integrity of, again, to get back to music, of my chord, my tonal values.
So we all, I mean, I guess everything, a house, a car, an animal, people have a sound. We're sort of have been created out of vibrations.
Yes.
And, well, just for one, understanding that or perceiving that or I think is helpful.
Yes, it is. And it's also helpful for people to, now that YouTube is, it's like, I think of YouTube as the Library of Alexandria coming back to life. It's burned down millennia ago, now it's come back to life. But you just go in and look up cymatics, and you'll see sound creating form. And you'll see sound creating things that look like little caterpillars or millipedes walking across the landscape. If you don't get that your sound and that how you think affects your cells, then that's that's an important it's an important piece of knowledge to have at all times.
So sound creates things. There's a book by Stefan Alexander, Jazz and Physics, which is a lot of it over my head, but one thing I think he was saying is the Big Bang was sort of sound. So sound kind of created all this. It flew off all these shapes and spheres and planets and all that. It's really the mother of everything.
Yeah, that's chaos. There's a whole thing on chaos theory. I mean, I looked into that too. I'm feeling my way through this based on my own personal experience. I'm not, but literally I'm watching people and myself multiple millions of times throughout the day. We're going from chaos to order, order to chaos to order, back and forth, nanosecond by nanosecond.
Consonance, dissonance.
Yes, and that's vibration. I'm waving my hand right now. That's vibration. And there are higher frequencies, there are lower frequencies, there are steady states, there are all these things that physics talks about that can be translated, if made into simpler language for the layperson, would be eye-opening for people. I think they'd be able to manage their lives much better if
they could really see what they were and what was happening.
That they are, you are a precious musical chord. I'm sorry.
I'll take that.
Yeah. Regarding the research I did in Boulder, when I finally looked into this phenomenon of synesthesia, I had a wonderful opportunity to work with some people out there in equine experiential learning. And I would sit on the sidelines, and as people were, being prepared to present themselves to the horse, I would draw the physical energy, the colors flying around in the round pen. And the horse generally was fascinating. I mean, I wish we had video of this. The 1,500-pound guru, the horse, would invariably, 99.9% of the time, act out the issue, the emotional issue the person was dealing with. We saw this over and over again in our workshops.
So the horse would sort of understand, perceive what the person who was going to ride the horse.
They weren't riding. This was not riding. You would just interact in the round pen. Yeah.
They would perceive the issues that the person had.
It was stunning. And then I would draw the energy flying around in the corral. So, and then they come on the sidelines, and then we'd go over the energetic structures that were happening when they were interacting with the horse. I had an incredible experience of this. I was sitting doing a portrait. I would do portraits of horses, and I would talk about what was going on with them and their health, and I would draw where the health issues were, and invariably that was the case. One time I was alone in the stall with a horse. I hadn't had breakfast, so my stomach was growling, and I was sitting over there on a little stool, and the horse came in and bent over and just leaned over and started eating its alfalfa, and picked up a whole bunch of alfalfa and dropped it in my lap.
They knew you were hungry.
You're hungry. Eat something.
So, I mean, they do talk about horses being the therapeutic incredible. Riding, all that.
Yes.
So what you're saying, horses perceive...
Yes.
Whether it's synesthesia, whether it's the colors or...
Well, I think horses perceive in that way, and basically what they are perceiving, and the human beings know it, they will perceive whether you are together with yourself, that is, you are congruent, or whether you are incongruent. And if you are incongruent and you're not with yourself, they will walk away from you.
Oh, yeah,
or they'll act out.
I've seen horses that somebody would get on them who would not really know what they're doing and wasn't congruent with the horse, and the horse would just run over into the bushes and stand there.
And again, to bring it all back to music, congruency is music, is the chord, is the harmony, is self-harmony, is integrity, coherence, all of that.
Wow. So you do have a website?
Yeah, my website is patriciarainillustration.com. I'm now putting up more recent pieces. I do political and social commentary and portraiture and that kind of thing, caricature. And again, I wanted to make mention of the caricature. I think I was, like I said, drawn to the black and white caricature because it emitted so much color and so much, I now know, so much sound. It was so unmistakable. So I'm still drawn to that.
But people could find out more about you and what you're doing if they're interested, and you're working on a video, I think.
Well, yeah, I may do a separate website for this, but I do mention in my bio, in my illustration website, that I give presentations on my experience with synesthesia. And I have a film that I'm redoing is an intro, and then there's a lot of Q&A, and then I might do little readings for people. But I've spoken to psychologists and groups of people like that, and it's been a wonderful experience.
Well, I think we'll have to schedule a synesthesia presentation sometime soon for all our friends and folks, and let everybody hear more about it.
I'll bring my musical instruments along and play chords and say, here's your chord.
Cool, that's great. All right, well, thanks very much, Patty. I really appreciate your being here. This is very interesting. It just, to me, it says there's so much in music, way beyond. We're more music than we know, and the more we can appreciate it, I think the better we'll be.
Absolutely, I agree. Thank you very much. I loved it.
All right, thanks, Patty. You've been listening to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy. Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society. We talk with musicians and others about the power of music and how we can use music to help create a better world. Please check out our website, www.planetarygigs.org, for information about some of the organizations promoting music and musicians, resources about the power of music, books, movies, articles, including new research on music and the brain. We welcome your support. The Planetary Gig Society is a Section 501c3 charitable organization, and you can donate on the website. You also can receive a free email signature block demonstrating your support for Planetary Gig Society. Please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Planetary Gigs. And we want to thank fabulous musician and teacher Eric Weinberg of Little Eric Studios for the Planetary Gig Talk music titled Chill Kid, It's Saul. So please check out Planetary Gig Talk on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. Subscribe and hear all the upcoming episodes. Thanks very much.